Some vacations never get mentioned again in the year-end email recaps. Some people once worked with you, but no one quite remembers when they left. And there are team-building experiences that the survivors never speak of again. Welcome to the place that holds stories no one wants to believe are real. In this video, you will hear 3 chilling experiences that happened during seemingly harmless team-building trips. From forests with no way out to resorts erased from the map, and even co-workers' faces, not listed on the company roster. If you enjoy horror stories with psychological depth and haunting atmosphere, hit the subscribe button. Every subscription not only fuels my motivation to keep telling these mysteries, but also ensures you won't miss the next time someone knocks at midnight. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get ready to enter 3 team-building stories. Not everyone returned to tell. Brian had never liked crowds. As a reclusive programmer, he felt more at ease sitting among lines of red error code than squeezing into a birthday party with cake and fake chatter. But this time, he couldn't say no. His manager had forced everyone to join a 3-day team-building trip to Yosemite. To improve team spirit, he reluctantly packed 3 t-shirts and a laptop, praying for Wi-Fi in the forest. The bus departed early in the morning. 13 people crammed into an old minivan, filled with loud chatter and pop music that made Brian's ears ring. He put on his headphones and pretended to sleep, but he could still feel someone's gaze, persistent, like needles pricking the back of his neck. When they arrived, the scene didn't look like the promotional photos. The campsite was tucked deep within a pine forest, nearly 5 miles from the main road. No cell signal, no resort staff, just a roughly printed paper pinned to the wooden gate. Welcome, special guests. Play until someone wins. Everyone burst out laughing. Must be part of the game, the HR lady said with a bright smile. That first night, they played a scavenger hunt. Each group was given a map and tasked with finding a hidden box in the woods. Brian got separated when his map led him to an area not marked on the guide, a mossy trail covered with dry branches where the wind seemed to vanish, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. And then he saw it, an old tent covered in rotting tarpaulin, not marked on the map. Its door was slightly ajar, and inside was pitch black, like a gaping void. On the flap, words had been scratched in with fingernails. Don't let them see you first. Brian turned and ran, but in the bushes behind him there was a sound, something moving, not human footsteps, but many legs, light, gliding, surrounding him. Brian stumbled back to camp, heart pounding like it would burst out of his chest. Under the lanterns of the main tent, everyone was still gathered, chatting and counting the found items. No one noticed he'd been gone for almost 2 hours. No one asked why his shirt was torn, or why mud clung from his knees to his ankles. He meant to speak up, to tell them about the tent, the words on the flap, the sounds in the bushes, but his throat was parched, and a vague sensation crept over him. Something was watching from the edge of the light. He retreated to the sleeping area, turned on his flashlight, and shut the door. At that moment, his phone vibrated, just enough signal for a notification to appear. TikTok. @Angela Cam just posted a video. Angela, the girl who live-streamed the entire trip, always recording videos. Brian didn't remember seeing her after the group split. A strange unease crept in as his finger tapped the notification. The video started with a familiar tune, filmed from shoulder height, but just a few seconds in, he froze. The footage showed him lost in the forest. The angle, from behind his back. Angela had filmed him, or someone had, pretending to be Angela. The video stopped at the moment he leaned in close to read the words, "Don't let them see you first." Then, black screen. Brian swallowed hard. He ran to the main tent. Angela wasn't there. The HR lady smiled when he asked. She probably went to bed. Tired, you know? But her eyes dodged his as if she'd heard that question too many times. He headed to the women's cabin and knocked. No reply. No sound. As he turned away, a soft click. The door creaked open. The room was empty. Pillows neatly placed, her bag in the corner, but no sign of use. Brian saw something under the pillow. A folded piece of paper, its edge stained with blood. Scrawled in marker, "They don't like being filmed, but they love the one behind the lens." That night, while the group gathered around the campfire, telling ghost stories and drinking wine, Brian sat silently at the edge of the light, his eyes fixed on the trees where something was moving, hiding, waiting. No one asked where Angela was. No one mentioned her name, as if she had never existed. And from the pitch-black woods behind them, a faint green light blinked on. A camera had just started recording. The next morning, the group was woken early to continue the orientation game. The HR lady handed out new maps, dividing everyone into groups of 3. Brian was paired with a young sales guy named Kyle and a girl he'd never seen before, blonde hair tied high, wearing sunglasses. He glanced at the printed list in the HR lady's hand. There were 8 groups, 3 people per group, 24 people. But Brian clearly remembered the entire group that came only had 13, minus Angela. Now there were 12 left. That means at least 11 people were not company employees. Brian pointed at the list. "Can you show me the full version?" The HR lady squinted at him, then smiled. "You just need to remember what group you're in, Brian." As she turned away, Brian heard her whisper to the person next to her, "Another one is about to drop out." They began their journey to checkpoint number 2 inches, coordinates deep in the forest. Kyle walked ahead, tapping his phone, while the girl in sunglasses said nothing. Only when Brian stopped to rest did she speak, as soft as the wind. "Don't let anyone turn their backs on the forest. They hate backs." Brian was startled. "Who are you?" She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils. Just a wet mass of darkness. "When we're done, you won't remember ever asking that." Brian jumped up and ran. He ran frantically along the path, through the bushes, until he reached a clearing covered in dry leaves. In the middle, an old cabin built of rotten planks stood. No door. No one. But the walls were covered with group photos. Their group. Each photo had a face crossed out with black ink. Angela, crossed out. Another IT guy, crossed out. Brian. In the last picture, he stood in the middle, and his face was torn out. A voice echoed behind him, deep, as if from underground. "The last picture will only have you." Brian spun around. Ian, an old colleague who had been fired from the company last year. He smiled, his face covered in wrinkled skin, as if he had been rotting for months underground. "I didn't believe it either. But they need new people every year. And now it's your turn." Brian didn't clearly remember how he got back to the camp. He only knew that when he woke up, the sun was high, and everyone was eating breakfast in the soft sunlight with pop music playing from an old Bluetooth speaker. Angela wasn't there. The HR lady whispered, "She probably went home early," as if that were normal. The last day passed like a dream drained of color. No one mentioned the cabin in the forest. No one asked about Brian's old group. He tried to recall the faces, but the more he thought, the more they faded, as if his memories were slowly being erased. As the car drove them back to the city, Brian glanced into the rearview mirror. The pine forest slowly receded, but someone's shadow remained motionless between two trees, slowly waving as if bidding farewell. 2 weeks later, Brian returned to the company. His desk was still there, but the group photo hanging in the lobby had changed. Angela was no longer in it. Her face had disappeared, replaced by the girl in sunglasses, now wearing an HR uniform. Brian asked the HR department. "Angela? Who?" the girl asked, tilting her head, smiling politely. "We don't have anyone by that name." That night, Brian received an anonymous email with no subject. There was only one attachment, a 14-second video clip. Opening it, the screen showed Brian standing in the forest, holding a camera, his face blank. Behind him, Angela was tied up, looking straight into the lens, whispering through broken breaths, "I saw you, before they saw me." The video turned off. His computer automatically restarted. And the next morning, Brian's name was added to the next year's team building guide list. Melissa never thought she'd participate in this kind of team-building event. As a newcomer to the marketing department, she only wished for peace, to meet deadlines, and to leave work on time. But her boss said, "This is a mandatory activity." And so, she and 11 other people were driven to a resort in the forest, 3 hours' drive from the city, with no Wi-Fi, no phone signal, and no quick escape route other than the vehicle that would pick them up 3 days later. The resort looked like an old re-education camp. Gray wooden walls, rusty tin roof, and a main hall still adorned with a non-working Soviet clock. There was no receptionist, only a man in a white shirt, slicked back hair, always smiling, but never blinking. "Tonight, we have a small game," he announced after the group finished dinner. "The game is called The Last One to Leave the Room." The HR lady clapped as if it were a lovely game. "It's just a little role-playing. Anyone eliminated will have to stand outside for 5 minutes in the forest to build endurance. It's not scary." Melissa was assigned to the first group. 6 people, a dark room, no windows, only a single yellow light bulb hanging overhead, and a camera in the corner. The mission? Find clues to escape before time ran out. But 15 minutes passed, and the door remained locked. No one in the group found anything. There was only the whirring sound of the ventilation fan and a musty smell like human skin soaked in water for a long time. She began to feel short of breath. A colleague named Carol whispered, "I see someone standing outside. There's a shadow, looking in." Everyone laughed, thinking it was a scare tactic. But when Melissa turned to look at the camera, its red light had turned off at some point. The light flickered slightly. Office. Then back on. When the light returned, Carol had vanished from the room. Melissa didn't dare to scream, nor did she dare to ask immediately. She turned to look at the remaining people, 4 of them, none showing panic. Only their eyes seemed vague, as if there had never been anyone named Carol. "She must have gone out," a voice echoed from the corner of the room. It was Ian, the sales team leader. He shrugged, smiling. "She managed to open the door. Maybe it's part of the game." "The door never opened," Melissa whispered. "No one touched it." But no one reacted. The light continued to flicker, and a few seconds later, the sound of the door lock clicking open. They were led out as if nothing had happened. No one mentioned Carol. The HR lady beamed, handed out juice, and asked everyone how they felt. Melissa was confused, looking around, but everyone's eyes avoided hers. It was as if the name Carol had never existed. She pulled a colleague, Mark, aside. "Do you remember Carol? The one who just played with us?" Mark looked at her, frowning. "Who are you talking about? Our group had 6 people, but now there are 5. Everything is fine." Melissa was about to continue asking when a loudspeaker blared, "Next turn will be Group 2. Please enter room number 4. Melissa watched them. Another group of 5 people entered the adjacent rooms. She took a step back, just enough to see the printed group list hanging on the entrance door. Her group listed only 5 names. No Carol. The HR lady approached from behind, as light as the wind. "Melissa, are you okay?" She nodded, but her heart felt as heavy as a stone. That night, everyone was assigned to individual bedrooms, but the room Melissa received was different from during the day. Cold white walls, no bedside lamp, no TV. On the pillow there was a small piece of paper. "There are only 9 real people left. Count again." Melissa rushed out of the room, running through the dark corridor. She counted in her head, 12 initial people, minus Carol, leaving 11. But if there were only 9, who were the other 2? She stopped in front of a mirror hanging at the end of the corridor. On it was a photo, a group picture taken in front of the resort. 11 people smiling. But in the bottom right corner of the photo, there was a person in a black shirt, long hair, standing with their back turned, blurred like a shadow. The 9th person. And Melissa couldn't remember when she had seen that person. Night descended upon the resort like a thick, black curtain, moonless, starless, and utterly silent except for the wind whistling through the trembling window panes. Melissa couldn't sleep. She lay in her room, the dim light from her phone's flashlight illuminating the ceiling, her mind filled with questions. Carol vanished, the list was changed, and the 9th person, who was it? Exactly at 2:07 a.m., there was a knock at the door, 3 knocks, silence, then 3 more knocks, slow, steady like the heartbeat of someone about to faint. Melissa approached, not opening the door, just asking, "Who is it?" The voice that answered was very soft, almost a whisper. "Melissa, open the door. It's Carol." She stepped back. The voice was familiar but hollow, emotionless, as if played back from an old tape recording. She didn't open it. The door was silent for a moment, then slowly, it creaked open a small gap. Cold wind swept in, and outside, there was no one. She slammed the door shut and bolted it. But when she turned back, something was wrong. The mirror in the room, which always reflected everything correctly, now showed a shadowy figure standing right behind her. Melissa spun around. No one. But on the mirror, a message appeared, written with a wet fingertip. "Not all colleagues are still alive." The next morning, she decided to seek the truth. She snuck into the staff room, the room only management staff had keys to. The door was locked, but the rotten wooden frame was easy to push gently. Inside was a row of filing cabinets. Each cabinet was labeled and contained files of employees who had participated in team building. Melissa rummaged through them, and her heart stopped when she saw the old photos. 2018, group photo with Carol. 2019, Carol was still there, but this time, her face was blacked out with a marker. 2020, Carol, in the role of an organizing staff member, black shirt, long hair. Every year, someone would disappear, and the next year, become an instructor. That's why no one remembered Carol. They had seen her, but no longer recognized her as a colleague. Melissa heard footsteps behind her. It was Ian, with a twisted smile. "You've seen it, have you?" he said. "Good. Now you just need one thing. Choose the next person." Melissa didn't clearly remember how she agreed. She only remembered Ian placing a list on the table containing the names of all the remaining members in the camp. His face was still smiling, but his eyes were as empty as peeling paint on a wall. "Choose one person. Just write their name," he whispered. "If not, you'll have to replace them." Melissa's hand trembled. She looked at the list. Each familiar name, each face that had once wished her happy birthday, shared lunch with her, or sent memes in the group chat. But now, they were all just options. No blood, no screaming, no overt coercion, only a pen and a blank line next to each name. Melissa wrote a name, not because she hated that person, but because she wanted to live, because she wasn't ready to disappear, not ready to become someone that people saw every day, but no longer remembered. 3 days later, the car picked them up to return. Everyone got into the car, laughing and chatting, as if the past retreat had been a normal experience. No one mentioned Ian. No one mentioned the chosen person. The new HR lady was waiting in the company lobby, younger, polite, wearing sunglasses. Melissa walked into the office. Everything was the same, except for a small detail. On the next quarter's HR planning board, there was a new entry. Internal Team Building Facilitator, Melissa G. Melissa stared at the words for a long time. Then she opened her email. In her inbox was a single message, no sender. "It's your turn to welcome the newcomers." Chris hated team building. To him, they were nothing more than disguised group therapy sessions where people tried to connect through childish games and cheap alcohol. But as a department director, he couldn't refuse. And so, he found himself here, the resort, repurposed from a 1930s sanatorium, deep in the Washington forest, 2 hours' drive from the nearest town. As soon as he stepped out of the car, Chris felt something was off. It wasn't the scenery. The resort looked better than expected. 2-story wooden houses, real fireplaces, a misty lake in the distance. It was the atmosphere, quiet to the point of suffocating, as if the forest was holding its breath, watching them. They had a group photo taken before checking in. The photographer was a tall, thin woman with a long, mask-like face who didn't say a word. She clicked the camera, nodded silently, then disappeared behind the pine trees. That evening, when Chris entered his room, room number 6, second floor, he saw a photo neatly placed on the table. A group photo, 12 people, smiling, standing in 2 rows. But in the photo, the spot where Chris stood was just a space. No face, nobody. Just a blurred area, like a layer of smoke trapped in a photographic negative. He took the photo to the reception desk, but there was no one there. Only a disconnected landline phone and a small wooden plaque engraved with the words, "We don't edit photos. We only capture what already is." Chris returned to his room, his heart heavy. When he opened his email on his phone, no signal, of course, he saw a single message in his inbox. "Images are reflections of truth, and the truth is, you were never here." The next morning, Chris went down to the lobby to find the manager, but still saw no one. The reception desk was empty. The glass doors were fogged with condensation, and faint piano music drifted from ceiling speakers. An instrumental piece, slow and sad like forgotten dreams. He found the resort library, an old, dimly lit room, full of brown, leather-bound books. There, he found something he shouldn't have seen, a thick, moldy, wooden-covered binder labeled Ashfield Institute Patient Records. Chris opened it. The first line sent chills down his spine. Christopher M., male, 34 years old. Admitted on October 11th, 1937. Symptoms: delusions of belonging to another world. Treatment: isolation and observation. Name, age, date of birth, all of it matched him. Chris was startled, flipping through a few more pages. There were photos, black and white, taken from an angle of a man sitting in a room identical to room number 6, where he was currently staying. Below, the caption read, "He believes he is reliving it." Footsteps made Chris jump up. He turned around, no one. But the file had vanished from his hands. He wasn't imagining things. The smell of old paper still lingered in his nose. His hands were still dusty with paper residue. In the evening, the group was invited to the concentration room, a small hall with chairs arranged in a circle, dimly lit by candles. The new HR lady, a slender woman with black hair, her smile as cold as ice, stood up and said, "Tonight's game, recall. Each person will tell a true memory. But if anyone tells something untrue, they won't be allowed to leave this place." Her words made the atmosphere thick. It was Chris's turn. He intended to tell the story of his first presentation to the board of directors. But as soon as he opened his mouth, someone across the table whispered, "You've never been a director." Chris looked at that person, a strange face but wearing the company uniform. The name on the name tag was also Chris. Everyone turned to look at him. No one laughed, no one reacted, as if they were waiting to see how he would disappear. Chris didn't sleep that night. He locked room number 6 tightly, drew the curtains, and placed a chair against the door as a hopeless barrier. The wind whistled through the window cracks, as if someone was whispering something out there, very close, very persistently. He flipped back to the group photo to find answers, but the photo had changed. In the center of the photo was Chris's face, clearer than before, but everyone else around him was blurred. No more eyes, no more smiles, just white shadows with dark halos instead of faces, as if he were the only one truly present in this photo. He ran out of the room, through the dark corridor. The corridor lights flickered, their light cold like lamps in an old laboratory. Each step echoed as if someone was walking with him, but never catching up. Chris found a staircase leading down to the basement, a wooden door locked with an iron chain. But surprisingly, the lock was already open, as if someone had been waiting for him for a long time. He went down. The air in the basement was thick. Concrete walls were peeling, and fluorescent lights flickered. At the end of the corridor was a large room filled with old hospital beds, IV drips, and dozens of patient charts with names like Chris M., marked processed. He walked to a large mirror hanging in the middle of the room. The mirror reflected nothing but a blurry black shadow, but gradually an image appeared. Another Chris, wearing a patient gown, head shaved, eyes bloodshot, mouth spread in a lunatic smile. Chris recoiled, but from behind a voice spoke, flat, emotionless. "The copy is complete. The original is no longer needed." He turned around. The black-haired HR person stood there. Next to her was the new Chris, the one who had sat at the table during the recall session. "You've relived this 13 times, she said. "And like every time, you don't believe you're just a repeating memory." Chris screamed, lunging for the door. But the basement door had no handle on the inside. He pounded, screaming. Beyond the door, the light faded. And for the first time, Chris realized he didn't know where he began, and whether he was real or just a forgotten copy left in the forest. Chris woke up in room number 6. Everything seemed normal. The bed was made, the curtains neatly drawn. No basement, no files, no screaming from last night. Just him. And a white envelope on the table addressed to Christopher M. He opened it. Inside was a short note neatly typed. "Congratulations. You have completed the assimilation process. Old memories will be gradually erased within 48 hours. You are now an instructor-level staff member. First mission, welcome the next team building group this Friday." Below, a handwritten note, slanted and blurry as if smudged by water. "If you're reading this, it's too late." Chris looked around. Everything in the room seemed familiar, but it wasn't right. The desk, it wasn't his. The group photo on the wall, he stood in the center smiling, his hand on someone else's shoulder. Someone else was himself, but not the him of now. It was him from 3 days ago, with a panicked look in his eyes, as if trying to scream something through the frame. Chris walked to the mirror. The reflection smiled back at him, but he wasn't smiling. And in the corner of the mirror, words scrawled as if carved by a fingernail. Every year they need someone to keep the memories and erase those who remember. The sound of a bus echoed from afar. The new group of guests was arriving. Chris stood up, adjusted his collar, and smiled. "So, you've just survived 3 team-building stories not for the faint of heart. If you've ever experienced a strange company retreat or simply felt that someone in your group wasn't quite normal, leave a comment below. I want to hear your own story. Don't forget to hit like if these stories gave you the chills, and subscribe to the channel if you're ready to uncover more mysteries, from ghosts at the end of the hall to memories no one admits ever existed. See you in the next video, where every small sound could be a call from the other side. And if tonight you dream of a team-building game you never participated in, try to wake up before it's your turn to choose the next person.